Rumblin podcast. I am your host, the Royal Rumbler, as always, and today, ladies and gentlemen, we got a stacked card for news, such as we've got Backstage Frustration surrounding the current state of NXT. We got a new nickname for Seth Rollins, Chris Jericho mocking NXT superstars because of injuries, and we've got an updated Hell in a Cell match card. All that and more on this episode of the Rumblin podcast. And for our first story, we've got the new SmackDown Tag Team Champions crowned, then get drafted to Raw. Before we get into the story, guys, if my voice sounds a little raspy, it's because I came down with a cold a couple days ago. It's not like I'm sick or anything. I'm not like throwing up or, having any of that stuff. It's just my throat feels sore and, I'm a little stuffy and I have a bit of a cough. I'm not sick though. So if you hear me coughing, sniffing, or basically like kind of grunting like like that, that's just because I came down with the cold. So it's nothing too serious, but whatever. I'll try to make this as enjoyable as possible. Let's kick the story off. As seen during Friday Night SmackDown's broadcast of the WWE Draft, the first 4 rounds of the WWE Draft, in my opinion, it wasn't the greatest of drafts, but, but Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods returned to WWE TV after suffering injuries back when Xavier Woods was out with an Achilles tendon injury since October 2019, and Kingston was injured back in July in an Extreme Rules match. But they returned to take on Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura for the SmackDown Tag Team Champions. And in my mind, it was a pretty good match. I found it to be a really good match. And at the end of the day, Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods defeated Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura to capture the SmackDown Tag Team Champions. Following the match, it was time for the beginning of round 4 of the WWE Draft. And Big E came out to celebrate with the New Day, because they were, obviously. And then Stephanie McMahon will come out because it's time for her to announce draft picks. And then it was Raw's pick. They decided to take the SmackDown Tag Team Champions. And this was really shocking because now the SmackDown Tag Team Champions are on Monday Night Raw. So I can't wait to see how they handle that. But the even more shocking announcement came afterwards when Big E was drafted to SmackDown, breaking up the New Day. The New Day was broken up because SmackDown decided to take Big E and Raw decided to take Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods. They've been tag team partners for the better part of half a decade. They've done so much together. And who knows, without the New Day, and Big E, Xavier Woods, and Kofi Kingston probably wouldn't even be in the WWE. They wouldn't have gotten to where they are today. And now they're being broken up. So now we're going to have to see Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston, what they can do without Big E. We're going to see Big E in a solo run. But they've been together for, 5-6 years? So it is kind of sad because they're one of the first tag teams that I started to watch. Like, when I started watching wrestling, I was watching, Shield, White Fame, and stuff like that. Then New Day, and I didn't like the New Day, but then I started to get along with them as I grown older to it, and now I just can't get enough. So it is going to be kind of sad to see them broken up because they've been the tag team for so long, and they've put so many records up. Who knows? And without the New Day, Kofi Kingston probably wouldn't have won the WWE Championship. But, so that is kind of sad. But, Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston are your new SmackDown Tag Team Champions as the New Day say farewell to not only SmackDown, but to their team. As Nakamura and Cesaro's tag team title reign ended at 83 days. That's all I've got for you on this story. It is kind of sad, but, we are just going to have to deal with it. So, now let's move on to the next one. In our next story, we've got Lars Sullivan returning to WWE on the first night of the WWE Draft on SmackDown. During Friday night's edition of SmackDown, Lars Sullivan made his return for the first time since June of 2019 after suffering an injury. And he came out to attack Matt Riddle and Jeff Hardy following their match against John Morrison and The Miz, who, in my mind, John Morrison and The Miz, just give him a win. Like, seriously, John Morrison needs to get one win. So, but, off the point. Sullivan debuted in April of 2019 when he attacked Kurt Angle. And then he continued to attack several other WWE superstars, including the Hardy Boys. And then during the middle of his push, some old comments of his resurfaced that were racist and homophobic in nature. They were also several very graphic, gay, not safe for work type videos featuring him that surfaced. As that was going on, he suffered a knee injury that required surgery. So, because not only was he injured, but he'd been suffering a lot of controversy with his comments on Stephanie McMahon in the past, how he was racist and how he had the not safe for work videos, the PORN, that type thing. But then he had to take a knee surgery. So then with that, we haven't seen Lars Sullivan since. I think now, him returning to the WWE, he's back on the good side of WWE. Oh, sorry about that. He will be able to make a big comeback in the long run. And honestly, I think this is going to begin pushing, Lars Sullivan even further. So, now with Lars Sullivan returning, he has been added to Monday Night Raw's draft pool. Basically, WWE drafts way, certain superstars can get drafted on one show or whatever. So, on SmackDown, they had a draft pool of superstars that would get drafted that day. Lars Sullivan will be in the draft pool for Monday. Now, let's move on to the next one. WWE announces 2 big matches for next week's SmackDown broadcast because WWE has SmackDown starting a new season because of the draft. So WWE has announced 2 huge matches for next week's SmackDown broadcast. Roman Reigns will take on Braun Strowman for the WWE Universal title match, which will headline the show. For the first time ever, the WWE Universal Champion will be defended on SmackDown. Also, we got the New Day will take on Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura and Sheamus in their farewell match. Because, you've got the New Day. They're splitting up. Big E's leaving to go to SmackDown, is going to stay on SmackDown, while Xavier Woods and Kofi are going to go to Monday Night Raw. So, as noted earlier, Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods won the SmackDown Tag Team Champions and were drafted to Raw. well, Big E is going to stay on the SmackDown brand, breaking up the big New Day. So, next week's season premiere, that's when that will be happening. So, I'm excited. Hopefully, it will be a good week next week, because SmackDown's been on a roll recently, and I would hate to see it get derailed. Now, let's move on to the next one. Let's go. As the updated WWE Hell in a Cell match card, there are now 3 matches confirmed to be happening at Hell in a Cell. Following SmackDown's broadcast of the WWE Draft, we now have 3 matches confirmed for Hell in a Cell. And what do you know? All 3 of them are Hell in a Cell matches. Our first one, we had Drew McIntyre versus Randy Orton for the WWE Championship inside a Hell in a Cell. Then we got the SmackDown Women's Championship match just confirmed yesterday. We've got Bayley versus Sasha Banks in a Hell in a Cell match for the SmackDown Women's Champion. And then we've got one match that I'm very excited for, because ever since Roman returned, I have been just the biggest fan of Roman Reigns. We got a Universal Championship Hell in a Cell I Quit match. Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso. This rivalry is really, really good. It may seem cringy, but it's really good in my opinion. And hopefully, there's more of it to come. Hopefully, this is probably the last time they face each other. And because I want to see Roman Reigns take on other people, and I don't just want him to take on, other people in his family. But if we're talking like The Rock in Roman Reigns, I am down to see that. So I'm honestly excited to see, these matches. If I were to say the one that I'm least excited to see, that would be the SmackDown Women's Championship match. Because the SmackDown Women's Champion match, I'm not saying that I don't like the rivalry, I just don't think it'll be good. And then for the Drew McIntyre versus Randy Orton match, that'd probably be my second one, because it's been a good storyline, but I think they could do so much more. Like, honestly, I think Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton, hopefully this is the last time they encounter, because I do not want to see another one of these matches. But the Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso one, as I mentioned before, is the match I'm most excited for. So we move on to the next one. As our next topic, we got the WWE Hell in a Cell. Should not be a pay-per-view event every year. Lots of people have been saying that Hell in a Cell should not be a pay-per-view event every year for the past month now. And October 25th will bring us the 12th edition of Hell in a Cell. And this is controversial, because some people say, Hell in a Cell, I really like it. I don't think it should be replaced. But some other people say, hey, this is a good event. But, honestly, I don't know if this will be or won't be a controversial opinion. But every year, I find myself hoping Hell in a Cell is replaced by a more generic event. Not saying that I don't like Hell in a Cell matches, because Hell in a Cell matches are really fun. But imagine if they were to switch it. Like, I would rather have No Mercy replace Hell in a Cell, or, I don't know, even Breaking Point, I would take. Now, even Taboo Tuesday or Cyber Sunday, whichever one, that's a controversial one because most people don't like the event. I kind of like the kind of interactive thing because that's what WWE's turned into these days. But still, out of those, I would want to see No Mercy replace Hell in a Cell because, Hell in a Cell is not. It shouldn't be a regular part that pops up every October because I've made the argument before with TLC. I've said before that TLC should not be a pay-per-view. And I'll say it here for Hell in a Cell. An event shouldn't revolve around a match unless it needs to revolve around that match for a particular reason. Hell in a Cell is different from TLC in that it's an actual gimmick. TLC is either won by pinfall or submission or climbing the ladder, meaning it's just a regular no DQ match that happens to focus on those three weapons because that's how it's written. Or it's a regular ladder match where people assertively will use at least one chair and at least one table during the fight. Hell in a Cell is its own distinct cage style. So my problem isn't in the gimmick itself. My problem is that it shouldn't be written just be that whenever October comes around, WWE has to put the Hell in a Cell cage around at least one feud, just because that's the name of the show. Hell in a Cell should be a game changer and a feud-ending spectacle. Two people fight in a series of matches, and they decide who to settle the score once and for all inside the most destructive way possible. It wasn't clockwork like Survivor Series being in November or WrestleMania coming around in March and April. And all too often, over these 12 years, there hasn't been one reason for a feud to go into Hell in a Cell. But it's happened simply because it's October. Sometimes the superstars have only just started their own feud. So, this year, thankfully, we have Bayley versus Sasha Banks and Drew McIntyre versus Randy Orton and Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso. Those two rivalries are more justifiable to put in this cage than some other examples from the past, like CM Punk versus Ryback. We didn't need that match. And honestly, here's the catch. If this show were called No Mercy, what's stopping WWE from having a Hell in a Cell match on it? Okay? If a feud is good enough, or if WWE just wants to get a pop, Hell in a Cell can happen any time of the year. We've gotten Hell in a Cell matches at WrestleMania since the pay-per-view has been created. We don't get that for anything else, do we? Do you see Money in the Bank ladder matches at any other show than Money in the Bank? How about any other Elimination Chambers, or Royal Rumbles, or Survivor Series matches? Those events have a distinct purpose and don't get in the way of anything else. There's a pattern to it and a reason to it. The Royal Rumble is every January, so you can set up for WrestleMania. Elimination Chamber follows to either determine the other number one contenders or to make sure the current champion runs a gauntlet to prove he or she is worthy of defending the belt at WrestleMania. It doesn't matter what feuds are going on at the time, as the priority is WrestleMania for both of those, and the storylines will work around it. Money in the Bank can theoretically happen in May, June, or July. It's mostly a means to give someone a post-Mania push and set the tone for next year. There's no problem with doing that match as a specific time of the year, because just like Royal Rumble and Elimination Chamber, you can just put anyone in the match. there doesn't need to be a feud involved just to justify it. Just pick 6 to 10 people and you're good to go. But with Hell in a Cell, the entire purpose is that it's a means to lock two bitter rivals inside a dangerous cage so they beat each other to a pulp until they move on to something else. If WWE doesn't do a proper job setting up feuds prior to October, suddenly Hell in a Cell comes along and we have lackluster Hell in a Cell matches with two opponents who might be better suited for just having a regular street fight. The more Hell in a Cell matches we've had, the less special they have become. There are now 42 Hell in a Cell matches that have taken place. Can you tell me any details about 3/4 of them? I mean, CM Punk fought Ryback in a Hell in a Cell match back-to-back years, 2012 and 2013. And I bet you didn't remember that at all until I just told you just a couple minutes ago. But you can tell me distinct things about HBK versus Undertaker, or Mick Foley's Fall, which is one of my most viewed videos on my YouTube channel of Wrestling Nostalgia. WWE should nix both Hell in a Cell and TLC from the pay-per-view lineup and stop doing the matches for a while. When a feud calls for it, should gimmicks like Hell in a Cell be pulled out? Then it will be something special, which it really hasn't been a long time. And by just having an October event called, I don't know, they could bring back Halloween Havoc, or whatever they pick. If they ever want to have a different type of gimmick on the card, it isn't hampered by already having the Hell in a Cell name preventing that from going down. The idea probably has a snowball's chance in hell of happening. But I think it would be the right call to help preserve what used to be one of WWE's coolest features that has lost a lot of its heat. And I know that topic was a long topic, but it had to be addressed. As now, we move on to the next one. Let's go. Seth Rollins introduces his new nickname as, ladies and gentlemen, can you give a round of applause for Seth Rollins, nicknamed as SmackDown's Savior. Seth Rollins was drafted to the SmackDown roster during Night 1 of the 2020 WWE Draft. WWE released this interview with him where he declared himself as SmackDown's Savior. Here's what he had to say. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. Seth Rollins, former Monday Night Messiah, and now I guess SmackDown's Savior. I don't know how that part's gonna play out, but I will say that no, the numbers don't matter to me. You gotta understand how things work. It's very neutral for champions to go off the board first. But who was the first behind that? And who was the first to change brands? Who is going to be the most talked about pick of this draft? I think I've answered all those questions. More the same, I am not done spreading my message. The greater good has not come to fruition. I think that while I'm happy to leave Raw behind, while I'm happy kind of to place new trails, sad not to see the Mysterios crumble anymore, but I'm bringing my brand to the blue brand. I'm very excited too. Now that was a pretty short topic, wasn't it? Yep, really short topic. I hope you enjoyed me reciting an interview from Seth Rollins. Honestly, I don't know what to think of him being called the SmackDown Savior. Like, I like the Monday Night Messiah and everything, but SmackDown Savior, just doesn't. Yeah. I don't really know what to say about this one. We've got a few more stories left to go. So, let's get started with the next one. Backstage frustration surrounding the current state of NXT. NXT has been dealing with injuries to several superstars as of late. such as The Prince, Finn Balor, Kyle O'Reilly, and most recently, Ridge Holland, who suffered a nasty leg injury on Wednesday's show and had to undergo surgery. It appears those injuries aren't the only source of frustration within NXT at the moment. According to a report by Fightful Select, the scene backstage was said to have been very chaotic at this week's NXT TV tapings, with change and uncertainty being common themes on the brand. The report also notes that multiple technical difficulties and errors at the tapings led to some of the frustration of the backstage staff. Fightful Select has also pointed out that the injuries to O'Reilly, Balor, and Holland have put those in charge in a tough spot, with most people backstage in NXT understanding the challenges that the producers are dealing with on the brand. So now writers are going to have to try and deal with a bunch of these injuries on their show. And honestly, I've never worked in business, but I can tell you I feel bad. Because, sure, it's terrible when people suffer injuries, but now with you having some of your top stars get injured, and you're going to have to write through that, it's kind of gotta be hard. So, that's all I got for this story. We'll move on to our final story, and soon. Ready? Here is the next story. And our final story for the Rumblin podcast today, we got Chris Jericho mocking Finn Balor and Kyle O'Reilly for suffering injuries. Chris Jericho has taken a shot at the NXT champion Finn Balor and Kyle O'Reilly. He did so after a fan asked him and told him to take notes from their main event match at NXT TakeOver 31, which in my mind was a really good match, where Balor broke his jaw in 2 places while O'Reilly broke some teeth. Jericho responded to the fan by writing the following on Twitter. Sure, how to each other up during a match so they can't work again for months. Hashtag smart wrestling. Wow. Chris Jericho. Man, Chris Jericho taking shots right now. Man, I've always loved Chris Jericho, and now he's mocking people. No, I've always loved Chris Jericho, but this isn't the big highlight. Because I know Chris Jericho working for the opposite brand, but you know, when somebody gets injured, you shouldn't be mocking them like that, unless it's a storyline, which it's not. But, nonetheless, Chris Jericho taking shots at the WWE and NXT. Now, that's all for today's show.